So Tony, arriving here at Oban Distillery, I was wondering, why on earth would you put a distillery right in the middle of the town?
Embark on a spirited journey through time and tradition, where golden barley transform into liquid gold. Whiskey. From the verdant fields to the mastery within aged oak casks, we explore the soulful alchemy of distillation across iconic distilleries. Join us as we unravel the tales and taste of a legacy, meticulously crafted, drop by precious drop. This is Whiskey Stories.
Traveling from the Isle of Islay, I'm heading towards Highlands and the town of Oban. Together with you, I'll visit the pulsing heart of the town, Oban Distillery, one of the oldest distilleries in Scotland. Let's discover Scottish hospitality and why Oban is a pilgrimage for whiskey lovers.
So actually the distillery was here before the town, back in 1794, late 1790s. Actually Oban was nothing more than a little fishing port. Back then, a couple of local brothers, the Stevenson brothers, decided to build a brewery here in the town, and moving on from that, due to a couple of changes in legislation, some of the tax laws, they decided to start making spirit here, spirit that we now know to be whiskey. And for pretty much the last 230 years, that's what we've been doing on this site here. Okay folks, welcome to Oban Distillery, welcome to the bar, okay, the 1794 bar. Over the next little while we are going to tackle some of our more exclusive releases, okay? Some of them exclusive to here at the distillery and some of them region specific as well.
So this is the old mill, I've heard.
This is the old mill room, so upstairs we have the malt which comes through, falls down into this, what we call the weir, and that weighs, really accurately weighs the barley that we're going to use. Very, very traditional. Lots of distilleries will have the same type of mill as this. Very well made, very old, but it never fails. It's quite important for us, the milling process. We always try to achieve about 10% husk, which is the shell, outer shell of the barley. About 70% grit, which is all the smaller parts, and about 20% flour.
So the distillery stayed in family ownership for quite a lot of its early history, moving between members of the Stevenson family and being bought by, eventually being bought by J.W. Higgin in the late 1880s. What that meant for the distillery, that's the sort of first traceable time that we were actually producing a spirit known as Oban whiskey, actually bottled that way, and it's where most of the buildings came from a rebuild in the 1880s. So a lot of the buildings that we've been going through today and looking at are all from that rebuild in the 1880s. So left-hand side of the little tasting flight there is our Oban 18-year-old. Our standard spirit, our standard flagship whiskey that we do here is 14. What we find with this, those extra 4 years, are just going to mellow everything out a little bit more. Also, because we take a really fruity spirit and put it into those refill bourbon casks, those sweet refill bourbon casks, that sweetness really, really sort of takes hold in those extra 4 years.
And so it's been going for 4 hours, and really what we're doing here is extracting all of the sugar from the grist using hot water.
What is the spring that's doing right now?
Yeah, so that's just adding more hot water. So initially, when we mash at the beginning, we're going to put our 7 tons of grist in here, along with about 26,000 litres of water, hot water. The temperature there is 64 degrees, really important. That releases the sugar from the grist. But then after about 2 hours, these shower heads, they come on and hotter water is added. This is now, I think, about 75 degrees. So it's just helping to rinse the sugar out of the grist. And the floor of the mash tun, we can't see it at the moment, but underneath this mash, the floor is perforated. Thousands and thousands of very, very small holes. So it's just filtering that sugary liquid from the mash into the wash back next door. That sugary liquid is called wort. Not a very nice sounding name, but it's very important. High sugar content, and the more sugar we collect, the more alcohol we can make. That's really important for us.
Fermentation times is one of those areas where we can really differentiate with other distilleries. However, it is one of the more limiting factors. here in Oban, when we ferment for over 100 hours.
Okay, 100 hours?
Yeah,
Wow.
100 to 120 hours. And what that gives us is a very fruity spirit.
So this is the wash bag that we're filling at the moment. You can see this is our very sweet wort that we're taking from the mash. It's cooled down and it's filling this wash bag up at about 15 degrees, quite low temperature. But we've added the yeast, and the yeast is going to start eating all of the sugar in the wort and turning it into alcohol. This is a slow process. It's a 4-day fermentation.
Yeah, 100 to 120 hours fermentation.
Yeah.
That's quite unique to Oban.
Yeah, absolutely. Many distilleries will ferment for 55 to 60 hours. That's enough time to produce all of the alcohol. So that's long enough for lots of distilleries. But we find that a long fermentation really helps to build a fruity character, a fruity flavour.
Actually, it's quite interesting because you're running the production 24/7, 7 days a week, almost the entire year. But we are sitting here by the stills right now shooting video. That's kind of curious. How can we do that?
Yeah, so with our production, we don't really want to sacrifice that quality spirit that we're producing at the end of it. So although that we are working round the clock to make as much Oban spirit as we can, it's still important that we stick to those traditional methods that we've got and that we use here. So for example, we do let the stills rest. That allows them just to settle back down before we then start to fire them up again within the next sort of few hours.
Okay, so the next stage in the process is the distillation. So I'll show you the stills here. Again, very compact, very small.
Cramped.
Yeah, we only have 2 here in Oban, which is really the minimum number for making Scotch whisky. The majority of Scotch whisky is double distilled, so once in the wash still, once in the spirit still. So we're going to take our wash after the fermentation. The alcohol strength's about 9%. We then put about 10,000 litres into here for a distillation. We add steam coils in the bottom of the still. That's what heats it up, just like a giant kettle. Then the alcohol vapours rise up inside. We're going to separate the alcohol from the water as much as we can. And during the distillation, that alcohol vapour rises up inside the still, makes lots of copper contact, which is important for us. It's then condensed behind the wall in what we call a traditional worm tub. Worm tub condenser, yeah.
Changing subject a bit. In your perspective, what are the biggest challenges Oban is facing today?
Well, one of them is we can only make so much. You know, we've done a lot of work over the last 5 years to really increase productivity, increase production, taking us up to that 1 million litres hopefully this year. But because of the condensed nature of the site and our real struggle to find any more space to expand, we're about as optimal and as efficient as we could be here. So for now, 1 million litres is probably the most we're ever going to make in a year, and that's obviously going to limit how much whisky there is out there.
Now from the first distillation, the alcohol coming through here has gone from about 9% alcohol up to about 25. It's good, but it's too low. So all the alcohol coming from the second distillation comes into this left-hand side of the spirit safe, and here it's split into 3 parts. A lot of people will be familiar with the separating the whisky, making the cut, terms like the head, the heart and the tail.
So from the first drop,
From the first drop coming in,
you'll keep a time?
we keep a time, and we allow this to run for 20 minutes. During that 20 minutes, the quality of the alcohol becomes much, much better. The alcohol at the beginning of a distillation, the quality is not as good as we would like. So we let that run into this tank. After 20 minutes, the strength of the alcohol is very good, and the quality of the alcohol is very, very good.
Exactly as we wanted.
Yeah, exactly. So we move this handle across and start collecting the spirit. That's the heart. This is what we want. It's everything between about 75 and 65% alcohol. That's the really good stuff. That goes through the left-hand bowl, collected downstairs. So that's what we're going to send away from the distillery. That's what's going to become
Oban, as
that's
we
going
know
to
it.
get bottled as Oban whiskey. Yeah.
What we're going to move on to, the next 3 drams that we're going to taste today, are all just available here at the distillery. I'll invite you just to pick this one up and have a little nose. This is a whisky which, if you do add a few drops to, it's just going to release it a little bit more. So add a few drops, nose and taste again, and then if it needs it, you can add a little bit more water. Really, really nice, citrusy, fresh Oban expression.
If you met someone who have never tried whiskey and don't know Oban, what would you like them to know about Oban?
Great question. I think for us it's very much about telling the story of the distillery and telling the general story about whiskey. I think you can only do that by explaining where it all started, the ingredients that we use and the traditional production methods that we go through to make what eventually will be whiskey. I think it's great when we actually sit people down and go through a tasting and try different whiskies with them and just see people learning and picking out things for themselves. This is our distillery handfill, so only available here. Around about 600 bottles from this batch. So I've bottled one today just for you to have, but I'll invite you now to try it because the way I like to pitch this one I like to think of as a 14, but with all the dials turned up. On the nose, I think it's really, really strong, smooth, toffee, fudge, vanilla notes, and it almost smells so sweet on the nose. However, once you then take that and put it on the palate, it reverts very much back to being that traditional Oban single malt that we know and love.
Tony, that was really interesting, but I know you need to fire up the stills now, so we need to wrap up and get going, all right?
Yeah, let's go.
Thank you, mate.
No worries.